Okay, welcome to just a wee spot of verbs review. So let me open up my shared screen here and we will talk a little bit about verbs, which is what you looked at last week for grammar. Okay, so obviously, just like always, here I go. I'll see you at the end of the video. See you guys. Okay, so verbs, a review. Alrighty, so overall last week, definitely the section that I want to take the most time to look at is transitive versus intransitive verbs. So this was the section that students seemed to struggle with the most. They needed more clarification on, and that showed across the board in terms of where points were lost, what students said on the Flipgrid video that they struggled with the most. This is the first week that I've really felt that kind of across the board, we were all on the same page on what we needed further learning on. So that's the section I'm going to spend the most time on. So here's the big question for transitive versus intransitive verbs. Does the verb have an object? If the answer is yes, then it is transitive. If the answer is no, then it's going to be intransitive. So I tried to use similar sentences here to show you that oftentimes verbs, when used in a certain way, could be either transitive or intransitive verbs. So let's look at the first sentence that is transitive. So the bird sings beautiful songs. So the subject in this sentence would be bird. The verb would be sings. What does it sing? It sings songs. So in this case, the verb sings has an object. This sentence has an object, and that is songs. So since I can answer the question, the bird sings what? Songs. That means that it's going to be a transitive verb. But let's look at something else here. Let's say we just have the sentence, the bird sings. Well, this sentence still makes sense. It's still a complete sentence because we have a subject, bird, and we have a verb, sings. But when we ask the question, what does it sing? We don't know. You know, the several things could follow that verb. It could be beautiful songs like previously, but it could also be a specific tune. It could say that it sings poorly. We're not sure what the object of this sentence is, which means that it's intransitive. Now, let's say that we have a phrase after the verb. So the bird sings at the park. Well, at the park is a prepositional phrase. We still don't know what the bird, which is the subject, is singing, which is the verb. It could still be the bird sings beautiful songs at the park. That would be a full sentence with an object agreement with the verb. But the bird sings at the park, we don't know what it sings. We still don't know what the object of sings is, which means that it's still intransitive. So I think a lot of us could figure out when there wasn't a phrase there, but we weren't consistently asking ourselves the what question. All right, let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so this is one that many of you missed last week on the assignment. So the sentence was, the many empty spaces on American maps of the time intrigued Powell. And we have to ask ourselves, is intrigued transitive or intransitive? Okay, well, this one, intrigued, which is the verb, almost every single person could identify what the verb was, but the transitive, intransitive question is where it really threw us off. So let's try to break down the sentence. What is the subject? Well, the subject of this sentence is maps, more specifically, American maps. What is the verb? We've already identified that. It's underlined for you here, intrigued. But does intrigued have an object? Who or what do the American maps intrigue? They intrigue Powell, which means that Powell is the object. Well, since this sentence has an object, that means that it is transitive. Let's look at another example from last week's assignment that many of you struggled with. So, the sentence was, John Wesley Powell came from Mount Morris, New York. Is came transitive or intransitive? Well, in this case, it is intransitive. From Mount Morris, New York is a prepositional phrase. We have a subject here. The subject of the sentence is John Wesley Powell. We have the verb, the action of the sentence, which is came. He came. But when we start to look at the object, well, where did he come from? I mean, like, he came with his family, he came, like, there are many questions that I could ask about this verb that are unclear. But if I pulled that phrase out, John Wesley came, that sentence would still make sense. From Mount Morris, New York is just adding further information, but it's not an object of this sentence. I will agree with you that this one was a bit tricky, but we have to be able to make sure that we can identify when a verb can answer that who or what question. In this case, it does not, which makes it intransitive. Okay, let's look at another practice problem on your own. There are two verbs in this sentence. So the sentence is, Congress slashed the survey's funds and Powell resigned. So you're going to answer the question, is slashed transitive or intransitive? And what about resigned? Is it transitive or intransitive? So ask yourself, does slashed have an object? Does resigned have an object? Try to identify what the subject is before each verb. And then ask yourself, does that subject and verb have an object agreement? Let us take a look. So let's look at slashed first. So the correct answer for slashed was transitive. So the subject before that verb is Congress. Congress slashed. What did Congress slashed? Well, they slashed the funds. We can answer the what question here, which makes it transitive. What about resigned? What's the subject before resigned? The subject is Powell. Powell resigned. Let's answer the question of what. What does he resign from? We don't know. It could be his job. It could be Congress. It could be from the room that he was in. But because we can't answer the what or who question here, that means that resigned is intransitive. So when looking at transitive versus intransitive verbs, it is essential that we always ask ourselves, can we answer the what or the who of the question? If the answer is yes, I can't answer that, then it is transitive. If the answer is no, it's intransitive. Sweet. I also had a lot of suggestions asking for active versus linking verbs. Now, this is where our data does not line up. In fact, many of you did really well on this section. It was just something that I think maybe you were a little unsure about, but you'll be happy to know that you did much better on it than you thought. But just a couple reminders as we go into active versus linking. Both transitive and intransitive verbs, which we just went over, are active verbs. So if you see a transitive or intransitive verb in a sentence, it's active. It's telling what is happening. Whether it has an object agreement or not, it's happening. Most often when we're talking about an active verb, we can embody it. I could get up and I could act it out. That really helps me know if it's an active or linking verb. So the sentence I gave here was Spider-Man shoots webs. Well, I could get up and I could demonstrate shoots. Like I could show you how Spider-Man shoots webs. I mean, I can't physically shoot webs. That'd be awesome. But I could show you how he does it in the movies, in the comics, so on and so forth. Because I can embody this verb, that means that it's active. However, with a linking verb, what they're trying to do is they're joining a subject with a describing word or phrase. They're describing more about it. So most of the time, they're either going to deal with the five senses, which though they may seem like you could act them out, most of the time you cannot. It would be very difficult to do. Or they're going to be from this list of am, is, are, was, were, will be, has been, and was being. So like if I looked at the sentence Spider-Man was in London, I couldn't act out the word was. So it's a linking verb. He was in London. Well, that's a full sentence. It has a subject and it has a verb, but I couldn't act out the verb was, which means that it's linking. Okay, let's take a look at a couple examples. So here's one that you looked at last week. The wonderful old oak tree grew on the wide hillside to the north of the farm. So ask yourself if you could physically embody the verb grew. Well, I mean, I could stand up and I could hunch down and then I could slowly stand up, and that would show that I grew from a shorter height to a taller height. So yeah, technically I could. And you could definitely show that an item grew. You know, if I'm growing a plant and, you know, it on one day was 6 inches high and the next day it grew to 10 inches high, that's something that's actively happening. It's an active verb. Now, something else that I suggest with active versus linking verbs is try to exchange the verb in the sentence with a linking verb from the list. So if I rewrote the sentence to the wonderful old tree was on the wide hillside to the north of the farm. Well, was in this sense doesn't dictate any sense of time. It was there. When I walked by it yesterday, it was there. And when I walk by it tomorrow, it will still be there. But it's no passage of time, which means that there's nothing active about that verb. That fundamentally changes the sentence. So when I switch out grew with was, I've changed that sentence from an active sentence to a sentence of linking verb. Now, had I been able to change it out and the sentence not change at all, that means that both of those verbs would have been linking. So let's look at the next example. So this is one that many of you correctly identified the verb. Over 90% of you correctly identified the verb, but you were unable to correctly identify if it was linking or active. So the footprints look fresh. Could you physically embody look? Now I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I could embody look. I could stand up and I could stare in one direction. But you're right, you can stare. But look in itself is very hard to act out, which is why I can see why this one was a bit tricky. Look is a sense. It's dealing with the senses, and by default, that means that it's going to be a linking verb. There's no action in the phrase look fresh. And I could easily replace look with another linking verb like are or seem. The footprints are fresh, or the footprints seem fresh, and it will hold the exact same meaning. So the fact that I'm able to interchange these words, look, are, and seem, and the sentence not change in any way, I'm just interchanging linking verbs. They're all linking verbs, which means that look is linking in this sense. Let's try one on our own. So this is one that I don't believe I used last week in the assignment, so I made sure to put it here for practice. This turkey tastes good with the tart cranberry sauce. Is taste an active or linking verb? So here's a couple questions that I want you to ask yourself. Could you embody tastes? Could you show an item tastes? And if you interchange taste with a different linking verb, does it have the same meaning? Alrighty, drum roll please. So if you said that taste was a linking verb, you are correct. So remember, taste deals with the senses. It would be very easy for me to show the word chews or crunches or licks, but taste would be very hard to embody on its own. So that means that it's going to be a linking verb. But let's try out our interchangeable linking verb theory and see if it still works. So in this case, I interchanged taste with is. This turkey is good with the tart cranberry sauce. It's the exact same meaning. I can switch out taste with is, and it's the exact same sentence. It gives less detail, but it's the exact same sentence. So the fact that I can replace tastes with is, not change the meaning, simply means that I'm interchanging linking verbs. So tastes is a linking verb. Okay, hopefully that gives you some more clarity on those two subjects in which you wanted further learning on, transitive versus intransitive verbs, as well as active versus linking. As a preview for next week, you're going to be looking at adjectives and adverbs. So remember, an adjective modifies nouns or pronouns, and an adverb modifies verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. All I'm going to ask you to do this week is identify adjectives and adverbs. That's it. You're going to be able to tell the difference between the two and tell me where they are in sentences. I cannot stress this enough. Please use the Khan Academy videos to learn about certain topics that maybe you're confused about. If you read the lesson on the quiz and you're like, I'm not real sure that I know what it means by adjectives, watch the videos. They will help you. They'll help you get better grades. And I'm hoping in a lot of ways, because this is what I would show in the classroom or these Khan Academy videos, they'll improve your overall understanding of grammar. So please, please, please use them. Just as always, follow the instruction provided on the self-grading assignment. Show me what you know. On your flip grid this week, you'll tell me what parts of it were difficult or easy. And then next week, you can expect the exact same type of video going over the sections that you'd like further learning on. Until that time, as always, you can email me with any questions, comments, or concerns. I'm more than happy to help you in any way. Just let me know, guys. Thanks.